The night was so quiet it felt heavy, not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that presses against your chest and reminds you how alone the hours after midnight can be. The clock on the wall glowed **2, 17 a.m., ** in tired red numbers. Outside, the wind scraped against the windows, carrying the smell of rain-soaked asphalt. I had been half awake, drifting between sleep and worry, when my phone rang, an unknown number. I almost ignored it. At that hour, only bad news travels without warning. Something in my chest tightened as I answered. "Hello," there was a pause on the other end, like someone gathering courage. "Sir," a man finally said, his voice low and careful, "I'm calling from a gas station off Highway 47. Your wife is here right now." The room felt suddenly smaller. "My wife?" I repeated, sitting upright. "That's not possible. She's traveling with our daughter." Another pause. "Longer this time. She's cold." The man continued, exhausted. "She looks like she's been outside for hours. And she has bruises, not serious, but enough to worry us." The word **, bruises **, echoed in my head like a gunshot. I stood up so fast the chair fell behind me. "Put her on the phone, please." I heard movement, then a familiar breath. Slow, shaky, unmistakably hers. "Hello," my wife whispered. Her voice wasn't just tired, it was smaller, like someone who had been shrinking themselves for hours, trying not to take up space in a world that had already decided to forget them. "Where are you?" I asked, though my hands were already grabbing my jacket. "I'm at a gas station," she said softly. I think they left me. I didn't ask who. My heart already knew. She kept saying she needed the restroom. The worker's voice returned gently. "They drove off. We've been checking the road cameras. No sign of them coming back." I looked around the house. Our house, every corner holding memories of her quiet kindness. The kitchen where she woke up early to make breakfast. The couch where she waited for phone calls that never came. The suitcase she packed with care, folding clothes for a trip she was excited about. A trip she believed would bring her closer to our daughter. I was already moving. Stay with her. I told the man, "I'm coming, no matter how long it takes." 300 miles never felt so short, or so terrifying. The road stretched endlessly under my headlights. Rain smeared the windshield, and every mile marker felt like an accusation. I replayed the last conversation I'd had with my wife before she left. "Don't worry," she had said with a smile. "I'll be fine. They want me to come." She had sounded happy, nervous, maybe, but hopeful. That hope burned in my chest now, turning into something darker. I thought of all the years she had spent putting others first. The meals she skipped so our daughter could have seconds. The nights she stayed awake sewing costumes, wrapping gifts, mending small things without complaint. She had never once asked to be thanked. She only wanted to belong. And now she was sitting alone at a gas station in the middle of the night, wrapped in a stranger's blanket, wondering what she had done wrong. By the time I pulled into the station, dawn was just beginning to bleed into the sky. I saw her before she saw me. She sat on a plastic chair near the entrance, shoulders hunched, hands folded in her lap like she was afraid they might offend someone if they moved. A thin blanket rested on her knees. Her shoes were dusty. Her hair, once neatly brushed, had fallen loose around her face. She looked smaller than I remembered. I walked toward her slowly, afraid that if I moved too fast, she might disappear. When she looked up and saw me, her eyes filled instantly. "I didn't want to bother you," she said, standing unsteadily. I thought maybe they'd come back. I caught her before she could fall, holding her the way I should have been holding her all along. I felt the faint tenderness of bruises beneath her sleeves, and the cold that had sunk deep into her bones. "They left me," she whispered into my chest. I waited so long. I closed my eyes, pressing my forehead against hers. "No," I said quietly. Though something inside me had already broken beyond repair, they didn't leave you. They abandoned you. As I helped her into the car, wrapping the heater around her like a promise, I looked back at the empty road stretching away from the station. Somewhere far ahead, our daughter and her husband were driving on, free, comfortable, unaware that the night they thought they'd outrun would follow them forever. And as the engine started and my wife finally allowed herself to sleep, one truth settled deep inside me, calm and unshakable. She didn't speak on the drive home. The car hummed softly beneath us, tires cutting through the wet road, heater blowing warm air that slowly brought color back to her fingers. She slept at first, light, broken sleep, her head resting against the window like she was afraid to lean too heavily on anything. Every time the car slowed, she startled awake, eyes darting, as if expecting to be left again. I kept my eyes on the road, but my heart was turned completely toward her. When the sun finally rose, pale and uncertain, we stopped at a small diner. I ordered tea for her, the way I always did. No sugar, extra lemon. She wrapped both hands around the cup, letting the warmth sink in before she spoke. They were angry with me, she said quietly. I looked up. They said I was slowing them down. She continued. That I took too long to walk, too long to rest, too long to exist. Her lips curved into a small, apologetic smile, the kind she used whenever she felt she needed to justify herself. I tried to hurry. My hands clenched beneath the table. She told me everything then, piece by piece, like someone afraid that saying it all at once would make it too real. How our daughter sighed loudly every time she asked to stop. How her son-in-law complained that the trip was being ruined. How they stopped at the gas station and told her to use the restroom quickly because they were already late. I thought they'd wait, she said. Why wouldn't they? Her phone battery had been low. She didn't bring it inside, afraid they might leave without her if she took too long. When she came back out, the car was gone. At first, I laughed. She whispered. I thought it was a joke. She waited 10 minutes, then 20, then an hour. Each car that passed made her lift her head. Each set of headlights felt like hope returning, only to disappear again. When the cold became unbearable, she tried to walk toward the road, thinking maybe they were just ahead. That's when she fell. I wasn't hurt badly, she said quickly, as if trying to protect them even now. Just clumsy, bruises from the ground, from exhaustion, from being a woman who trusted the wrong people. They didn't answer my calls, she finished. I didn't want to bother you. I thought maybe I deserved it. That was when something inside me finally broke. Never, I said, louder than I meant to. The word startled her. I took a breath and reached for her hands. You never deserved to be treated like that, not by anyone, not even by our own blood. Tears slipped down her cheeks silently. Not loud, dramatic tears, but the kind that come from realizing you were wrong about the people you loved most. I thought of our daughter as a child, clinging to her mother's leg on the first day of school. The nights my wife stayed up when she was sick. The years of sacrifices made without record or recognition, and this was the repayment. When we finally arrived home, I helped her inside like she was made of glass. I drew her a warm bath, laid out clean clothes, sat outside the bathroom door until I heard her breathing slow and steady again. That night, after she fell into a deeper sleep, I sat alone in the living room. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply thought. I thought about how easy it had been for them to drive away, how effortless cruelty can be when comfort matters more than conscience, how people convince themselves that abandonment is just an inconvenience with a better excuse. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no messages, not even a lie dressed up as concern. They hadn't even wondered if she was safe. In that silence, I understood something with terrifying clarity. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't panic. This wasn't ignorance. It was choice, and choices, I knew, have consequences. I walked back into the bedroom and watched my wife sleep. Her face was calmer now, but the trust she once carried so freely had been wounded. I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and made a promise not aloud, but deep enough that it rooted itself in my bones. They had left her alone in the cold. I would make sure they learned what abandonment truly felt like. Not through anger, but through truth. The house changed after that night, not in obvious ways, no broken furniture, no slammed doors, but in something quieter. The air itself felt more careful. My wife moved slowly, as if the world had suddenly become unpredictable beneath her feet. She apologized for things that didn't require apology, for sleeping late, for forgetting small details, for being tired. Each apology cut deeper than anger ever could. I watched her heal the way you watch a cracked vase, still whole, but never quite the same. The bruises on her arms faded from purple to yellow, but the bruise in her heart lingered. Sometimes I caught her staring at the front door, like she was expecting someone to leave again. "I must have been difficult," she said one afternoon, folding laundry with trembling hands. "Young people don't have patience for old bodies." I knelt in front of her and took the clothes from her lap. "Your body carried a family," I said gently. "If they couldn't carry their conscience, that is not your fault." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded, though I could tell part of her still believed she was to blame. Kind people often do. I didn't confront our daughter. Not yet. I understood something important. People who abandon others rewrite reality to survive themselves. If I accused them too soon, they would deny it, minimize it, turn cruelty into coincidence. I needed the truth to stand on its own. So I waited, and I gathered. The gas station manager was kind. He remembered her immediately. The woman who sat quietly for hours, refusing help at first because she didn't want to cause trouble. He gave me the security footage without hesitation. Time, stamped, clear, the car pulling away, the long hours of her waiting. The call logs told their own story. Missed calls, unanswered messages, silence stretched across hours like a deliberate choice. I saved everything, not out of rage, but out of respect for the truth. At the same time, I began to loosen my grip on things I had held together for years. The house they lived in, still legally tied to me, the business loan I had co-signed, renewable only with my approval. The monthly help we quietly provided, I let it stop. No announcement, no explanation, just absence. It didn't take long. The first call came 3 days later. "Dad, why isn't the payment going through?" My daughter asked, irritation barely hidden beneath forced sweetness. "I'm reviewing things," I said calmly. "We'll talk soon." She scoffed, clearly offended. "About what?" "About your mother," I replied. Silence, then laughter, short, defensive. "You're exaggerating." She wandered off. We couldn't wait forever. I felt no urge to raise my voice. "You drove away," I said simply, "and you never came back." Another pause. This one was heavier. "We assumed she'd call you." Her husband cut in. "She's not a child." "No," I agreed, "she's not." And that was all I said. I hung up. Days passed. Friends began asking questions. Family members heard pieces of the story, not embellished, not emotional, just factual. A woman left at a gas station. Hours alone, no calls returned. Truth doesn't need anger to travel. My wife worried when she noticed the distance growing. "They're busy," she said softly. "Don't make things worse." I kissed her forehead. "I'm not making anything," I said. "I'm letting things be what they already are." When the second call came, there was no irritation, only panic. "We're struggling." My daughter said, "We need help." I pictured my wife sitting in the cold, waiting for headlights that never returned. "I helped when you were kind." I replied, "You'll have to learn what life feels like when people decide you're inconvenient." She cried then. Not for her mother, but for herself. I listened not to punish, but to remember. That night I wrote a single sentence in my notebook, a promise to myself, asterisk, asterisk, justice doesn't shout. It waits until the truth can no longer be ignored. Asterisk, asterisk, and I waited. because the lesson they needed to learn was only beginning. They thought the silence was temporary. People like them always do. At first, they believed I was simply upset. That time would dull the edges, that love would excuse cruelty the way it always had before. They waited for the familiar pattern, a softening voice, a compromise, an open door. But this time, the door stayed closed. Weeks passed, the help they had relied on quietly vanished, one piece at a time. Bills arrived without solutions attached. Invitations stopped coming. Friends who once laughed easily with them now asked careful questions, or none at all. When the story reached them, it wasn't dramatic. It didn't accuse, it didn't scream, it simply stated facts. You left her at a gas station. She waited for hours. She was cold. You never came back. Facts have a way of stripping excuses bare. They tried to defend themselves at first. She was slow. We were tired. It wasn't intentional. But every explanation sounded smaller than the truth. And the truth kept spreading, not like gossip, but like understanding. People stopped trusting them. Not loudly, not publicly, just quietly, the way trust actually disappears. Doors closed without slamming. Calls went unanswered. Opportunities faded. Abandonment has a taste. They were beginning to recognize it. One evening, my daughter stood at our door. She looked thinner, older, uncomfortable in a way that had nothing to do with money. When I opened the door, she didn't meet my eyes. "Dad," she said, voice trembling, "Mom won't talk to me." I didn't step aside. "She's resting," I said calmly. "She doesn't owe you her strength." Tears filled her eyes. I didn't think. "No," I interrupted gently. "You didn't. That was the problem. Her husband stayed in the car. He couldn't face us. Cowardice often wears the mask of pride until the moment it's tested." My wife stood behind me then, her hand resting lightly on my arm. She looked at our daughter not with anger, but with something far heavier. "Disappointment. I loved you," she said softly. "I still do, but I will never forget how small you made me feel." Those words landed harder than any punishment I could have designed. My daughter sobbed, collapsing inward, not because of consequences, but because she finally saw herself clearly. And for the first time, she wasn't the victim in her own story. I didn't tell them they were forgiven. Forgiveness isn't something you demand. It's something you earn or learn to live without. As they left, I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace because the suffering, I promised, was never about cruelty. It was about understanding. They had left a woman alone in the cold because she was inconvenient. Now they lived in a world where convenience no longer bent to protect them. They experienced distance, isolation, the quiet consequences of being untrustworthy. 10 times more suffering doesn't always mean pain. Sometimes it means asterisk asterisk, clarity asterisk asterisk. My wife healed slowly. She laughed again. She stopped apologizing for existing. She learned to sit in rooms without shrinking herself. We took walks together, unhurried, unconcerned with anyone else's impatience. One night, as we watched the sunset, she squeezed my hand. "Thank you," she said, "for coming for me." I kissed her knuckles gently. I always will. Some people mistake kindness for weakness, but they forget something important. Kind people endure quietly until someone they love is harmed. And when that happens, they don't seek revenge. They let the truth do what it does best.